Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Um, I'm here to introduce Daniel Hess, who is going to talk about his poetry book tonight, Just a Boy Blaming Himself. Daniel Hess found his passion for writing from the loss of his best friend and cousin, Anthony, when Daniel was only 10 years old. And since then, writing, especially poetry, has been a source of solace and escape. Originally, Daniel was pursuing a career in pharmacology, but switched gears to let his creativity blossom, attending Towson University in the electronic media and film program. After many years in the world of corporate and event videography, a creative rekindling again sparked in 2018. Since then, Daniel has been back to producing creative short films and his passion of writing. Now, Daniel has self published his first book, a collection of poetry, Just a Boy Blaming Himself, and is working to produce his first completed feature film entitled Sparrow's Point. And talking with Daniel tonight is Clay McLeod Chapman, who's the author of multiple novels, including Whisper Down the Lane and The Remaking, as well as short story collections. Upcoming projects include Unknown, a psychological horror anthology television series. His stories have also been adapted into award-winning short films. In comics, Chapman is the writer of the Marvel series Scream, Curse of Carnage, and he has also written for The Adventures, Amazing Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, and American Vampire, among others. And he currently teaches writing at the Actors Studio MFA program at Pace University. So thank you, Dan and Clay, for joining us, and I'll let you guys.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, my friend?
Good. It's amazing because this is actually the second time that Daniel and I have been able to kind of have this conversation. So I feel as if anything, we really should take this show on the road.
Yes.
We'll do a little road tour, like a literary road tour, right? Like, we'll get the van, we'll sell the merch out on the table. I'll be your opening act. You're the headliner.
I think we flipped that one, but yeah, sure.
I mean, it's exciting for me because it gives me an opportunity to parade my copy out, which is now kind of dog-eared with some of my personal favorites.
Nice.
If anything, for those of you out there joining us tonight, my name's Clay. I'm going to be talking to Daniel about his book, Just a Boy Blaming Himself, which if you don't already have a copy, you most definitely should. The folks here and this wonderful novel neighbor, they are offering copies, selling copies. So I'd say it's a great place to pick it up if you don't already have one.
Yes.
But yeah, Daniel, let's talk about the book, because I feel as if it has a really kind of amazing genesis, which I feel like it's almost kind of like a part of the book. I'd be really curious to hear you kind of speak about how Just a Boy Blaming Himself kind of came about.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that it came about purely, I guess, sort of by accident. I've just been writing poetry like to just kind of deal with the day to day. I would be at events or I'd be at home just like not feeling 100%, and I would just write these things on my phone. Or some days, I'd be out taking a jog or just walking around the neighborhood, and again, something would flash in my head and I would just start writing something down. And never, ever, ever did I imagine I'd put it into any kind of collection. I didn't think for a long time any of it was really good enough. So for about 5 or 6 years, I just collected everything and slowly got confidence boosted, and finally was just like, I just got to do this. And last year, and all the free time the world provided all of us, I sat down and researched just how to do everything, and found some great folks to help me edit the book and the writing, and then get it all ready for print. And come January, I just woke up one day and I was like, today's the day, and I clicked the button, and it's been live ever since.
It's amazing. So let's break that down a little bit, because what you're suggesting is the gestation, the actual writing of the book was 5 years. Did I hear that correctly? If we're talking kind of A to B, that, the kind of process itself was over the course of 5 years of writing poems.
Yeah, it was just a very slow process. Like I said, it was more just writing to sort of get emotions out that I felt like I couldn't really express to anyone else. And they just slowly started growing in amount and size. And, some days I'd find myself writing like 2 or 3 poems in a single day. And other days it'd be like, or, there'd be a big span of like weeks where I wouldn't write anything. And then it would just randomly flash again and I'd start writing.
And I should know the answer to this, but in terms of the amount of poems written versus the amount of poems published, how many did you write versus how many are actually in the collection itself? Like, is it all of them? It can't be all of them, is it?
No. So it's not all of them, but I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, I think there was only about 5 to 10 poems that might have made the chopping block. Besides that, though, they're all pretty much there.
It'll be a part of the director's cut. When you re-release the novel, the collection, you can do
the Snyder cut.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you could, I don't know, I want to kind of walk back to that very, very first poem. I mean, it's one thing to be like, oh, I want to write, or I want to kind of express myself or kind of articulate these feelings. But the A to B of actually kind of writing a poem, like, do you remember what that moment was of actually saying to yourself, like, this is, like, do you even remember which the first poem is? Like, do you have, like, is that still kind of in your memory at this point?
You mean like the first poem in the collection as a whole?
Well, just the first poem you wrote, like the first,
okay.
Like, I'm imagining you either jogging, or I'm imagining you being like, I have this thing I want to articulate and it's not coming, so I'm going to do this. It's kind of a leap of faith, or it's a leap of creative endeavor. So, for me, I'm just really curious, like, what was that like? Like, what was the kind of moment of, did you say to yourself as soon as you wrote the first one, like, I'm going to do this again? Or was it kind of like, did it surprise you that there was a second poem, a third poem, a 10th poem, a 100th poem? Like, just the process.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it like way back, I mean, poetry writing really started when I was like super young. I mean, after losing my cousin and everything, it was sort of my way of, expressing myself. So that's why for me, like, poetry has always been pretty intrinsically linked with like getting emotions out into the open.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like pretty introverted in that respect of like talking about and showing emotion. So it was just easier to do it that way.
Right.
And then as I got older, there was an instance years ago, I wish I still had that poem, but it was a local community like competition thing called, it was like Mr. and Mrs. ESP. And you basically would be, if you won, you'd be in this parade for the rec council here.
Wow.
And I was in the shower. I remember it. I was in the shower and it was like, we had to write about sportsmanship. And I wrote this, like, I think maybe 10-line poem about like sportsmanship, if that. And if I went to my mom, she'd probably have it somewhere in a folder. But I won with this poem. And so like that was my first instance of like feeling like my writing had any kind of validation.
Yeah.
And then I sort of lost that for a very long time. I constantly just got myself really bogged down by wanting to write like bigger stories, but not having the discipline to really sit down with them. And then, as I got into my mid-20s, I had my really tumultuous like relationship breakup time. And I think it sort of just blossomed out again. That was like my second sort of what you could call like traumatic, in quotes, kind of moment in my life.
Yeah.
And I think it sprung out of that. And, it was just like, it's like you said, it's like it was one thing. And then I was like, there's another one in there, and it just kept flowing outward from that point kind of forward.
So then can you take us to the point where you had that epiphany of, oh, I want to put these all together in a collection? Like, do you remember, can you like recall the actual kind of genesis of like, this is a book, I want to make a book?
Yeah, I mean, I was writing my like film script around the summer of last year, and I had the thought. I just had this one day. I was just like, I have all this stuff. Let me just put this in a Word document, and then it wasn't even really a plan to do anything with it. I was just like, let me just have this, and then as I continued on with my writing with the script and everything, I just kept thinking like, I gotta just put something out there, and I gotta start putting something out there more. And so, at that point I was, putting myself out there for writing for different like magazines and stuff, and online publications. And I was just like, the day is never going to get like any better. There's not going to be a perfect day to do this. So I finally like, had it enough saved up to sort of like get all the motions together for all the, uh, editing and all that stuff. So I just pulled the trigger on it, and then, it was sitting there again. It was probably sitting for a month. I had it all done for about a month. And then finally in January, not because it was the new year or anything. It was just because I was like, you know what, this is it. Today's the day.
Gotta do it. I'm going to totally date myself and say, when I have, an epiphany or inspiration hits, I'll pull out a notebook, or I'll pull out sticky notes, and I'll write it with a pen. So it's funny to me as an old fogey here to hear you say, I'll pull out my phone and write a poem on my phone. And like, I'm being a little silly here, but like, it's, to me, I can't help but think of technology, or the kind of process of writing on a digital device, as maybe perhaps being a part of the process as well. Do you not write freehand? Like, is this all digital? Like, are you in the matrix with your poetry?
I love writing it out, but this is what I do when I write it out. And I have a true like Kafka moment, and I say, you know what, it's all got to go away. So I can remember once upon a time I was just writing on notes, and I had this like little pile, and I got really, really down on myself one day, and I ripped it all up and I threw it out.
Wow.
And after that, that's when I was like, we got to write this out, because when it's digital, for some reason, I don't think to delete it. I just have it there.
It's in the cloud. Like, even if you wanted to delete it, it would exist in some kind of virtual world. Wow, that's interesting. Do you find yourself writing differently based on how if it's clicking versus freehand? Like, do the words come in a different clip or a different pace? Like, is there any difference, or is it the same?
I mean, it's pretty close to the same. It's just with poetry, it's that fury of writing. So oftentimes, like, I'm starting to think more of switching back over to written versus just on the phone, because like I've had some times more recently where it's like, autocorrect will pop up, and I'll be like, I'm just trying to write this word. And if you mess up my flow one more time, I'm going to like throw you across the room. So that is the one kind of like caveat with writing it out in that form. I think if I was doing it freehand, I could just like furiously write really quick, and it's not like the notepad's going to be like, did you mean to say this word?
Yeah. Intuitive poetry software. Auto poet. Well, I think if anything, I hope I've warmed up the crowd. I think we should hear some of your work. Did you bring any from the book that you want to read for us tonight?
Yeah, so I have a few, and if you want, like, I can read one, then we can chat about it for a minute or two. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But I figured I would start with one to sort of appease our cicada overlords at the moment. which is a poem called Cocoon. So I figured it was appropriate given all of the noise in the backyards right now. So it goes like this. I could lay here all day in this cocoon of warmth. The only light, the screen from this phone. It would be easy, burying myself away from the world. I wonder what it would be like if I did. Find me at the start of spring, like some kind of creature of hibernation. Eyes hollowed out, skin now mushy, bones cracking from lack of movement. I would be warm at least. I would be rested. It would be peaceful. And that's Cocoon.
Nice. I am going to resist every urge to ask, where did you get your idea from? Or where did that poem come from? But, you know, what is inevitable is that knowing that these come from these impulsive, spur of the moment moments for you. I mean, I feel like you're, and I know this of you personally as a filmmaker, that there's a certain kind of element of being a documentarian, that, you know, you're capturing these moments either by doing interviews or by kind of creating kind of artist profiles for other filmmakers, writers, musicians, chefs. I mean, do you, in writing these, say to yourself, I'm going to take a moment and capture it? Like what is the mandate here? Like, what is your mission statement in writing these?
I mean, I think a lot of it is that it is capturing these moments and sort of getting them out in the air. I mean, I can remember specifically, like with this one, you know, it was a day that it was cold, which is like, I'm just the worst. I'm not a winter person. And just doing exactly that, like just being wrapped in this blanket, like a cocoon, because that's what I do. It's just like, you know, just wrap it over my face and just enjoy that little bit of warmth for a while. And just waking up from this, like, you know, nap time stupor in the middle of the day and just, you know, saying like, what is this like? What do I wish this could be? And, you know, just that feeling of like wanting to escape, but also not wanting to move at all. And so, yeah, so that's where a lot of it sort of draws from, is just those moments that, you know, I'm just there and just trying to capture that feeling.
Yeah. Can we hear another?
Yeah. Let's go through the old book here. Let's see. So next I have a poem entitled Mundane Motions. These days, the days are filled with mundane motions. The nights are filled with weeping willows. In between I hold my breath, hoping to not fill a lung with the fluid of my suspicion, deep upon your wicked tongue. I could fill the void with empty baskets, or treats designed to die and rot. You might not like them for a moment, but it is all for naught. May the sun burn bright and fast, pushing bodies into shadow. If the prophetic notion does not come to pass, maybe off-kilter words will make all the difference.
Wow. I had this moment where I thought to myself, you know, if this spans 5 years worth of work, and you're true to your word that only 5 to 10 of these poems didn't make the cut, are you entertaining the notion of starting over? Like, will there be another anthology, another collection? Like, are you when you know, it just, for me, it would be so kind of daunting to be like, well, that was 5 years. Now I'm gonna wait another 5 years and kind of start fresh. Like, have you thought about a round 2?
Yeah, so actually that's kind of already in the planning.
Oh, nice.
I've been writing with a lot more of a furious pace, I'd say, these days. and I have the title worked out in my head and everything. So it's exciting because I feel like now that I've gotten the big hump, because that's how I saw it. Is just like this was like the big hump,
Yeah.
and and now that I sort of have things worked out in my mind on what to do, how to accomplish things, I'm like, now this the pace can pick up because now that I know where it's going to, it sort of makes the pacing a lot better and a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Because I understand where it can all go now.
Yeah. And tell me where writing kind of entered into your life, because I mean, I should stop encouraging my kind of vision of you, but I feel as if when I first encountered you, I thought of you as a filmmaker. And these kind of we are as artists kind of the Venn diagram of all these different kind of influences and mediums and modes of expression.
Mhm.
But I think of you primarily as a filmmaker, a screenwriter, and yet writing has been a kind of rather substantial facet of your creative kind of output. So to me, like, I wonder if you could talk at all about like where writing came into the fold, how you've been writing now in these kind of very odd pandemic times. I don't know, like what is writing now versus what is filmmaking become in a post quarantine coronavirus everything kind of worldview.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's writing was first, and what kind of happened is I really almost forgot about it. Um, I before I went into college, I was writing a lot and just trying to make up stories in my mind and everything. And like I said in the bio at the beginning, I was originally supposed to go to school for pharmacology of all things, and really dead set on it. And come, the summer before college, I was like really just, not sure. And I had a really good friend at the time who was like, maybe film, maybe think about film, you can write stuff and you can make it come to life. And it really, fascinated me because I was like, it combines the writing, but then you can also have this other like skill set to have. So thinking in terms of black and white and what could be more, I guess, financially viable, filmmaking sort of became that because I thought like, okay, I can make stories, but then I can also provide like services and stuff like that by providing videography and things,
Yeah.
And so I kind of lost the touch for a while, came out from college, had some good traction, but then life came back around and I moved out and had bills and everything. So again, it became doing video, and I got into weddings by accident and made a career out of it for a while, got really burned out and went back to trying to be creative again. But I realized when I did that the second time around back in 2018 that like, I can do it. Like I can make film and things like that, but my mind just does not process filmmaking the same way it does writing.
Yeah.
So when I go to like film something, angles and shot compositions and stuff, they're there if I just sit with myself for hours on end and like storyboard something to a fault. But otherwise, like I am so lost in the sea of what it is. Whereas writing is just second nature. Like, and I was really kind of running from that in a sense for a long time. And with COVID, you didn't have really the option to do any kind of filming or on set for a while. So I sat myself down and told myself, okay, we're going to have the discipline to finally, start writing. And it was writing the feature film script. And then it turned into starting like a novel, which I'm still working on, and then getting this poetry collection into shape and just kind of letting that be my like dipping the toe into the waters, so to speak.
Yeah. For those of you watching, we would love to hear any questions that you might have. just put them in the comments section below. We do have one already. This comes from Ellen. Do you have any favorite poets or authors or filmmakers that you think have influenced or inspired your work?
I mean, filmmaking wise, for me, it's got to be Jean-Luc Godard, and especially the French New Wave film movement. That was the first time I really watched cinema and saw how like just different it could be. You know, growing up watching, you know, the typical like Hollywood films, you know, like Back to the Future, E.T., you know, all these, they're great films in their own right, but you get used to that sort of like formulaic style. And when I was introduced to like French New Wave and Godard, especially, it really kind of spoke to me in a way that like I didn't realize film could. And in the same line with that, like Wong Kar-wai, he's a Hong Kong filmmaker. Another one that his work is like highly poetic. So seeing that like merging of cinema and poetry, like kind of coming to life, kind of really resonated with me too. Like especially In the Mood for Love and Chungking Express are like two great films of his. Authors wise, I'd say last year, you know, I didn't read for a while. Like that was the other problem. I wasn't reading, you know, and that's a big no-no. I think reading is so important. I know. I was just watching films, sitting on my butt. And I went on like a huge stint of just like reading through Hemingway. I don't know what it was. I was just like, I'm just going to sit here and read Hemingway. And I went through pretty much book for book of his last year, and seeing like the ease of his writing, but like the way in which he's able to kind of be poetic in his own sense, like really describing things, really spoke to me. And it really kind of like opened up a door, like especially for me working on like my novel now, it's like really opened up a door that I feel like it makes a lot more sense to write something than it ever did. Because I used to just feel like super confused and daunted by it all. But now that I'm like older, more disciplined, I'm able to really kind of like break it all apart and see how like the structure comes to be in writing like a book.
Yeah. Can we hear another poem?
Yeah, of course. Let me see. What did I have? Okay. This one's called Festival Vibes. I'm in an oasis of bodies and blood, hormones raging, drugs taking hold, smoked up even. It's harder than ever to feel how I felt many years ago. It is fun, but I am already good to move forward. Is it bad that my attention is more divided? Not by any lack of trying. I just want to listen to music on a personal level, by myself in a dark room at night. But with you friends, I will dance, playing pretend for as long as I can.
Wow. I wanted to push, and this is inappropriate, so you can say no. But if I picked a poem for you to read,
Of
would
course.
that be, yeah, you would
Yeah.
take requests?
I'll take requests.
Okay. So I'm putting that out there. This is last call for questions from the audience. So if anyone out there wants to ask anything, put it in the comment section. If you out there have a particular poem from the book that you want to hear read, maybe this is your chance. But
Taking requests.
for me, I don't know why, but on 119, I have a personal affinity for Die. Do you mind reading Die?
That was hilarious because that was actually next on my list.
Oh my gosh! Here we go. See, we're on the same wavelength.
We are, and it's a real mood booster, that's for sure. So this one is entitled Die. I'm gonna die one day, and that's okay. Tell my mom and dad I lived like it was yesterday. All the green fields are gray. All the toadstools have faded away. Soon my eyes shut wide. Soon my heart stops racing.
You say you're cheeky about it being a mood booster, but like I don't know. Like I find that a lot of these poems have a certain kind of streak of humor running through them. It's not overt in any way. It's not it doesn't bludgeon you with its comedy. But I do think that there is a very dry wit going on here, and I think some of that is observational. Some of that may be kind of delivery. But at the end of the day, like you can take something like Death and still find a little bit of levity within it, which is, I think that's why I respond to, the first part of it, the first half of it. I'm going to die today. I'm going to die one day, and that's okay. I don't know. Like it reminds me of almost like Paul McCarthy would be like drafting up Yesterday, and this is kind of his his kind of thought process. So I don't know. I like it. Is there anything that I'm leaving out? Is there like what's next for Daniel? Like where are we going from here?
I mean, I feel like I'm in a million crossroads right now with everything, which is a really exciting thing. Right now, I, of course, doing everything with the book, working on the novel, working on a follow-up book of poetry, finally finishing up with the feature film script, which I feel like I finally kind of nailed down the path of it. Trying to get that into production somehow, some way. And, I'm also writing film reviews. I'm doing a lot with like the indie, sort of super indie film community. I'm watching a lot of like short films these days and super duper indie like feature films. And so I'm posting a blog of a film review every day except for Sunday right now. And then I'm also doing a Filmmaker of the Week podcast where I sit down with indie filmmakers from all over. Like this past week, I just sat down with a great filmmaker from Mexico. And this last weekend, I sat down with a filmmaker from Paris. So just keeping myself busy. That's sort of the name of the game for me. I find that idle time doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah. No, I know that feeling. Daniel, I want to say thanks. It's been a blast. It's always good to kind of like have a chance to chat and hear you read some of your poetry. For those of you out there, you should definitely pick up the book, Just a Boy Blaming Himself. Available at your local independent bookstore, much like Novel Neighbor. Thank you very much to Novel Neighbor for having us out.
Yes.
Yeah, for all of you at home, hope you're staying safe out there. And we'll see you on the next book tour.